This is an interview with Rita Santos, the wife of Mr. Manuel Santos. They live at 4052 Happy Valley Road in Lafayette. Now, did that sound correct, Mrs.
Yes,
Santos?
it is.
Mrs. Santos, when did your mother and father first come to this area?
In 1903.
And were you born at 1903?
I was born in Berkeley,
Yes.
and then we lived at Mrs. de la Viaga's place.
In Oakland, yes.
My father took care of the place for a while, and then he went back to college in Claremont Avenue. They had a little store there in the corner. It used to be out in the ranch at that time. And then my father got a typhoid fever, and the doctor told him he had to move away from the Bay Area. So he came and bought the place here next door, and that was in 1903.
I see. What was your mother and father's name?
My father they used to call him Tony. It was Antonio.
Antonio? Yes.
J. Borges, B-O-R-G-E-S.
Yes.
And my mother was Augustine, A-U-G-U-S-T-I-N-E.
Oh, yes. Was your father born in this?
He was born in the Azores.
In the Azores. Oh, yes, and came to this country. How did he happen to come to this particular area?
Well, he had an uncle in Pleasanton that used to have a lot of the land that the San Francisco Water District has now. And he sold that, I think at that time, for $40,000, which was a fortune. Then he went back to the Azores and married and had one son. They're all dead now. And then my father was around, and he got a job over in San Francisco. He worked for the Schultz liquor people, delivering. They used to deliver, I think, in barrels at that time, with a team of horses. And then he met my mother, and they got married in San Francisco.
And was your mother born in San Francisco?
She was born in Madeira.
Yes, in the valley.
No, Madeira Island.
Oh, Madeira, yes.
Madeira Island. And then she went to Brazil as a little girl because her father passed away. And she lived there for quite a while. And then she came out here to the United States and met my father in San Francisco, and they got married.
Yes.
Then they moved over to Berkeley, and that's where I was born.
And that's where you were born. So you say you were 3 years old when you...
3 and a half. My folks moved out on December the 7th of 1903, and I had been 3 years old on June the 5th of 1903, so I was 6 months and 2 days old. I mean, 3 years and 6 months and 2 days.
Yes. Did your husband buy this the ranch here?
Yes, he bought it.
This is your father now. Your
no,
father?
This was ours. My father's was next door.
Your father's was next door. Oh,
so my husband bought in 1918, I think it was.
Yes. So your husband's family lived here also?
No, he was from Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
So he had no one here but himself.
Yes. When did your husband come to this?
In 1913, he came to Massachusetts.
Yes.
And then in 1916, he came to California.
Well, how did he happen to come to California at 1916?
I don't know. A lot of people were coming from the east to California. They used to hear that it was a nice state and there was work.
Yes.
So he came out here and got a job, and we met, and 5 years later we got married.
Yes. Did you you went to school here in Lafayette? Yes. How did you go to school?
I used to ride a horse.
Yes.
Ride horseback.
Oh, I see. Did you have brothers and sisters who
Nobody,
went to school with
just
you?
me.
You were an only child. I see.
My husband's an only child from the first marriage.
Yes.
And then his mother died when he was, I think, 8 years old. Then his father remarried, and he has some children from this wife.
Yes.
But she died 4 years ago in San Leandro.
Yes.
And my father-in-law died 2 years ago.
Tell me more about going to school in Lafayette. How long did it take you? Do you remember? I mean, you went out and did you saddle up your own horse?
My father did.
Your father did?
He always saddled it up
Yes.
and got it ready and brought it out by the picket fence. Was next door up here that I lived when I went to school. And then I would get on the horse and go to school. So I don't really know how long. There was a time when Happy Valley Road had a lot of gates. And each ranch had their gate across the road. Like, if you had the next ranch, you had a gate there. The next person would have a gate down there at the other end and so on, because they had cattle and horses, and they didn't want our cattle to get into your place and yours to get into ours, so they had to put a fence. So we had to open the gate and go through.
Were there other children who went to school at the same time?
There was a girl by the name of Lou Bell Morris, and then Irene Coates lived down here. Then she later became Jones, and Lou Bell became Groshong. But she lost her husband, I don't know, 2 or 3 years after she was married. She was quite young. He died. He got kicked by a cow, and he got some kind of an infection, and it killed him. He got a blood clot, I think, was in his leg. That was it. He was a very, very nice fellow. Then she remarried. She married a fellow from Walnut Creek, Joe Stern. He was a musician, and he died suddenly. Then she married another man by the name of Banks. I don't know what his first name was, and he has died. So she's a widow the 3rd time, I understand. She lives down south somewhere. I've lost track of her.
Yes. So you would go to schools, and along the way there would be other children that probably came along.
Yes, she came from over the hill on horseback.
And then went to Lafayette School, too?
Yes, that was the only school around.
Yes. How many children would you guess, were in school at that time? This would be now, we're talking about 1912, are we?
Yes.
About 1910,
starting about 1907.
Yes. So...
then to 1915 or something like that.
Then the children who lived in, say, Orinda, they all came to Lafayette School?
No, they had a school. They had a school over towards Moraga. The little building used to still be there, but I don't know if it's there now. I haven't gone up that way. I got my hair wet because I was washing. Just can't tell you. I think maybe Sybil might be able to, because she was right from Lafayette. And
we'll ask her, because I think that's where Miss Bickerstaff used to teach.
I don't know whether she ever taught in Walnut Creek or not.
I think she taught in Walnut Creek also.
I think she did. Then she married Mr. Dewing.
Yes.
Later.
And became a widow, and then married Mr. Rosenberg.
Yes. Mr. Dewing was a friend of my dad's from Oakland, or Berkeley, I guess it was. For years they used to know each other. And then she married Mr. Rosenberg,
yes.
And he died.
No, he's still living in
that's right.
Yes, he's still living in Oakland, because I interviewed him not so very long ago.
He's living. She's the one that passed away.
Yeah.
And her nephew and I went to school together, Harry Boyer.
Oh, I see. Yes.
And he became he became an officer of some kind, connected with police business. And then later, he was the man on the bridge, Antioch Bridge, that used to collect the fare there.
Oh, I see.
Every time we'd cross the bridge, we'd always stop and talk a little bit. That was Harry.
What do you remember most of this area as a child?
Well, I remember cattle.
You had a cattle ranch then. Did you have cattle on your ranch?
We had milking cows.
Yes. Tell us about your ranch then.
My father had 28 acres here. My husband later bought 12 and a half. So between the two places, we had 40 and a half acres. But 28 was my father's.
Yes. Now, you had a dairy then?
Yes. Well, a few cows, and I used to skim the milk with the Dillaval separator. And then Mr. Buchanan used to come around and pick up the cans of cream. And then the skim milk was fed to the pigs. And when they were ready to butcher, my father used to butcher and take them into town. It was so different than now.
Did you take them into Lafayette or to Walnut Creek? Oh, to Oakland, yes. So, so then you had...
They would be inspected there, but you could kill them and take them down. The butcher would buy them directly from the farmer, and they would inspect the meat down at the shop. Some inspector would come through and do that. But there was no trouble butchering them inside them. My father used to be a good butcher. He'd clean them up nice and take them down.
Did you also have range cattle?
No, just dairy.
Yes.
Milking cows.
Yes.
Some calves. My father used to go to the different dairies and buy calves, because sometimes some of the cows gave so much milk that one calf couldn't drink it all. And instead of milking part of it, he'd have 2 calves. And the cow would raise the 2 calves. When they were ready to be butchered, he would kill them and take them into the butcher. Always into Oakland.
Did he
or Berkeley, too.
Did he have someone to help him on the farm, or was he able to do all this?
He did all his own
Sounds
work.
like a big job. Because
He worked hard. He was a good worker.
yes, I should think so. That
Like my husband, he took over and did it all too.
yes. Who are some of your neighbors out in this area that besides the? Now you told me that you went to school with various.
Oh, yes. Well, at that time we had Mr. and Mrs. Albert Giroux down here, the big walnut tree. We had Mr. and Mrs. Robert Thompson over there, and Mr. and Mrs. Keefe, Ed Keefe, who became a traffic officer on the highway. They lived over there. And then we had Mr. and Mrs. Robert Roberts next door.
Now these people all had farms too,
Yes.
didn't they? Yes.
They did, the Robertses had dairy. They had some cows to milk, but the others didn't. Down here, Mr. Giroux just had hay, and I think he had a team of horses. And then Mr. Thompson had 4 horses, I think it was. They used to call them the roadmaster at that time, because he used to take care of the roads. And his son-in-law, was Ed Keefe, used to go with him. And their driveway was up the hill there, and that hill used to slide so many times in the morning when I got up and it had rained hard through the night, the hill would have slid down. They'd have to shovel the mud below the road so they could drive through with their horses even.
So you had hard rains just like we did last year.
Yes, we used to have big rains, much bigger.
That didn't keep you from going to school, though.
Oh no, I used to go to school just the same. I had a raincoat and a horse. Once in a while I'd get to school with my shoes full of water, but then we'd drain them out.
Oh.
And the poor teacher, she used to have a big fire going in the wood stove, coal.
Tell me what you remember about the school. You were telling me now you had a wood stove.
A big wood stove in the middle of the building, of the room. I went to school when there were 32 of us there. That was the 8th grade. And Miss Dipple, Marion Dipple, was our teacher. She used to take care of the 8th grades. Starting
All eight grades.
Yes, she'd start with one grade, and then the next, and the next, and the next.
And you were all in one
Room.
school, all in one room.
She had a first grade at the head, second, third, fourth, and fifth, down to the end. When I was in the 8th grade, I was down near the window. That's the building that they use for the community church now.
Yes.
I don't think it's a community anymore. It's
It's right across from the library.
yes, it's
Presbyterian church.
yes,
Yes.
but they used to call it the community
Methodist church, I'm not sure. But it's, yes, the
school. They've
School.
added to it.
yes, and the belfry is
Yes.
there. So that must be
And when
rather
I was
familiar.
riding the horse, they got so used to that when they used to ring the bell at 8:45. And if we weren't careful when the bell had started to ring, our horses would jump and start on a gallop. Yeah, really.
They knew it was time to get
It
to
was
school.
funny. You know, animals learn things.
Yeah.
The other girls and I, the same thing. Our horses would just jump and go so we wouldn't be late.
So you tie your horse up
In the barn.
In the barn?
And stay there all day, tied up by the manger. Nothing to eat, just stand there.
Yeah.
We'd get through school, we'd walk to the barn, get on our horse and come home.
Yes. I think that sounds very adventurous.
I remember when we had a flood one year and that creek got full of water, went all over the schoolyard. By the time we stepped off of the last step of the building there, the back, we had to step in water way above our shoes. And we had to walk to the barn in that water. And when we got to the bridge was completely covered with water. And some of the men were there, and they had ropes, bricks tied with ropes. And they called to us, and they said, if the bridge gives, because they didn't know if it was going to hold the weight of the horse, they only let one horse go across at a time. If the horse goes down, they'll swim out. You grab the bricks that we'll throw to you, and we'll pull you. Oh, the water was flowing strong.
Really, yes.
But thank goodness the bridge was there. There was one bridge moved down below that used to go to the Sacramento Northern Railroad. It moved, the whole bridge, cement thing, all moved away from the road. When we went down to see it, it was over here, the road.
So it had really been a big rainstorm.
Oh, it was a big one. We watched it from the school, and that kept coming up higher. We'd mark there's a stick, see how
Do you
long
remember
it took.
about what year this was?
I think it was 1915.
Yeah. You said that you went to school until the 8th grade in Lafayette. Where did you go to high school?
I didn't go.
You didn't go?
At that time, we had to go to Lafayette, leave our horse there somewhere, and we couldn't leave it in the school barn because they needed those stalls for the grammar school, and I wouldn't have no place to leave the horse. And we couldn't very well leave the thing out in the sun or tied up to a post all day, so I didn't go. My father wanted me to go to Berkeley and stay there with someone that he knew and go to school from there. My mother kind of objected. I was the only child. I think she felt sorry not to have me. I'd have to stay there all week, and it wasn't very convenient to get back and forth. It had to be with the horses, and it was the old tunnel, and it was hard. He'd have to go and get me on Friday nights or something, and in the winter it would be dark, by the time I'd get out of school and be able to come home. It was pretty hard with the no light. The tunnel was all dark. My father used to take the whip and take it, take the hard side and measure before he went in the tunnel how far.
Because it was so dark.
And then he'd go along like this, driving. He'd be driving on the left side, and he'd go along, and when he couldn't touch the wall, he knew he was getting too far out, so he'd pull the other way a little bit. And when he touched too hard, he was afraid that the spokes of the wheel would catch on those boards there, because they had those timbers. He would pull in a little bit. And the horses kind of find their way, but still they can't think about the spokes of the wheel or the hub of the wheel. It would be the hub that would catch.
That was quite an adventure going through that old tunnel. I've heard other people talk about it.
At times he used to put a lantern under the wagon, so if anybody came, they could see he was coming. He'd have a lantern lit under the wagon.
To
give
tell
him
the
an
other
idea.
person that...
And once in a while the horses would stop and my father would say, "Oh, someone's coming," and he'd whistle and the other people would whistle, and then they would get out and see how much space they had to pass each other so they wouldn't stick their cars together, their wagons.
Yes, it was a close shave.
Yes. Our neighbor down here, Mr. Johnson, he was killed in the tunnel by some robber that held him up, and they found him dead in the wagon.
Really? When was this about? Do you remember?
Well, I don't know. The children were in school with me, but I don't remember. It was a few years before 1915, or probably 1911 or 12. I don't know. I don't remember the year. But I know the children. One of the girls was just a grade behind me, so it...
One of the Johnson children?
Yes, Agnes.
Yes. Oh, that's a terrible thing.
And someone came along, and when the horses stopped in the tunnel, they went to investigate, and they found him. He was, I think part of his body was in the wagon. Some was hanging over. The horses got the hub of the wheel against the board, and they couldn't go any further, so they stayed there.
Yeah.
And he was dead. They thought somebody had seen him pick up some money in Oakland, or Berkeley, I don't know which, downtown somewhere, for some of the produce that he had taken down and sold. They saw him get some money, and they stopped him to get the money away. Then there was another man from Moraga. He was Mr. Lucas.
What was his name? Lucas?
Tony Lucas. He
Yes.
was held up one time too. And then somebody got hit over the face one time with a buggy whip.
So it was rather a dangerous
It was.
thing.
They had robbers in those days too.
Yes. Nothing has changed, has it?
Only we have more people and more robbers.
Yeah. Mrs. Santos, you were telling me that your father rather, came from what islands were you telling me?
St. George.
St. George Island. Did he speak Spanish?
Portuguese.
Portuguese. Do you speak Portuguese?
I do.
Oh, that's marvelous. I'm so glad to hear you say that. Do your children speak Portuguese?
We don't have any children.
You don't have any children. When you went to school, then you were bilingual. Did you learn?
I didn't know the Portuguese too well then. I have picked it up since I got older.
Yes.
I can read and write it, and I speak it.
Yes. Oh, I'm just delighted to hear you say that. I was. Were there other Portuguese children in the area?
Just a boy and a girl.
Who were they?
No, 2 boys, 2 brothers. The Barralia boys, they live over on the other side of Akalani's high school. You know where that other high school is? I don't know the name of it. Where the signals are after you pass Akalani high school, and before you...
Spring Hill.
Oh,
What
yeah.
about that Spring Hill
Spring
school?
Hill,
Yes.
that's it.
They lived in that area there.
They still live there. They sold that land where the school is. It used to be their father's, and then they cut it when the father died. And then they lived there. They have a nice home in the back. You go around
Yes.
and they're in the street.
Were your families acquainted at that time?
Yes, they
were,
knew each other.
Yes. Did you feel any discrimination at all when you were in
Oh, no.
school? There was none.
None at all.
I was just, I've interviewed a number of people, and most of them seem to be Anglo, and I was just wondering if...
No, there was no difference. They never even spoke about me being Portuguese.
Yeah.
Nobody said anything.
Well, I interviewed let's see, what was... Mrs. Santos, tell us, where did you meet Mr. Santos?
I met him at my cousin's home in Oakland. He had come out from the east, and he knew her, so he went to visit her, and I went to visit her. We met there.
How old were you?
I was 16,
Yes,
and he was 20,
yes,
and we got married when I was 21, and he was 25.
yes. And then, and you came directly out to this area then?
I lived here.
Yeah,
I lived here all the time.
yeah. And your husband, did he come directly after you were married to this area?
Yes, we went over the hill to the Moore Ranch, they used to call it, and we lived there. And my mother took sick 3 days after we were married, and we came to live at her home to take care of her, and then she died, and we stayed there. And then we went to live at Major Garrett's place for about a year. My husband managed the ranch.
Oh, where was that?
Right down here where Pikes live, Mr. and Mrs. Pike.
Is this the Colonel Garrett who has
Yes.
built the building downtown?
Right.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that experience.
They
You
were
worked for-
lovely people,
yeah.
and we lived there when he had the building made, I think. We were there at the time. And I'm not sure if that was the year we were there, but we lived there for about a year in the little house in the back. I noticed it the other day when we passed, they put a new shingle roof on it, so they're taking care of it. It's Mr. and Mrs. Pike that lived there. And we lived there for a while. My husband managed the place, and Major and Mrs. Garrett were wonderful people. They called him Colonel. We always called him Major. And he used to go by Major Manuel Garrett, and he used to laugh because his name was Manuel and my husband's was Manuel. Sometimes I would call Manuel, and he'd say, "Yeah." I wouldn't be calling him Manuel. So I told him 2 or 3 times, I said, "Major, I'll never call you Manuel. I'll call my Manuel." So he says, "I won't answer."
Mrs. Garrett is still living in Oakland.
At a rest home.
Yeah.
So we'd like to see her. She was such a nice person.
I understand. She was a lovely lady.
And he was a very nice man. He was always very good to my husband and I. They were very, very kind. They had their son Bob and their daughter Edith. They're both dead.
Now, I didn't understand quite. Did you after you were married, you lived down in the middle of Lafayette for a while? Is that
No, Colonel Garrett's place. Right here.
Here. Oh, I see. I didn't quite catch
Few
that.
houses.
I see. And then, how long did you live there?
About a year.
About
my
a year.
husband managed the place.
Yes.
And then we came back to live up here at my father's again and take
Yes.
care of him. Then he remarried 3 years after my mother passed away, and he went to live in Concord at his wife's property.
Yes. And so, and then did your husband manage
The whole ranch.
the whole ranch? And you have a lovely large home here. Was the home here already built at that time, or did your husband
No.
build
We
it?
just had it built. This first part we had built about 21 years ago. Then we wanted to build another one down below, and the planning commission wouldn't give us permission, so we had to add on to this one. That's why it's kind of an odd position, but it couldn't be helped. There's no other way we could do
Oh,
it.
it's lovely. You have this beautiful view with all
Thank
these
you.
beautiful
Here we can see over the
hills
when the
and
leaves
trees.
fall off of the trees, we can see quite a bit. We can see ream.
You can.
Yes. At night we can still see it now, but see all the lights there
Yeah.
up above. But when the leaves fall off of the trees, we can see a lot more. We're getting closed in on account of the leaves.
I know.
So many trees.
I see you have lots of different kinds of trees. Your husband must be
Yeah,
interested in planting
Yes,
not
he is.
only...
And he does a lot of grafting and budding. I think he's started to have the avocado trees in Oakland. First, they used to tell him that they could not have avocados, that they wouldn't bear. So my cousin had some on MacArthur Boulevard. He had 3 big trees, and his house was a 3-story building, and the trees were up above the house. And my cousin used to say, "Oh, I feel so bad to have such big trees and no avocados." My husband said, "They have to be grafted." So he says, "Can you do something about it?" He says, "Well, I can try. I won't kill the tree. I'll work on it and see what I can do." Pretty soon, he started to have so many avocados that he gave all his patients boxes of avocados. Just had hundreds of them. They just hung in clusters.
Are they edible? Were they edible? I've never heard of that.
Oh, just like
Really?
you buy.
Why, I think that's perfectly amazing. I thought all avocados came from Southern California.
No.
Arizona or...
We have a friend of ours from Fremont gave us some of those little ones, but they're small. We like those big ones, and that's what he's been budding. We have 2 or 3 avocado trees. I think one has 2 or 3 avocados.
Bearing in this
Starting.
area?
Oh, they bear like everything. Boxes and boxes of them.
Amazed. I didn't
But you
realize
have to
that.
graft them
Yeah.
or bud them.
Yeah.
So my husband's quite an expert on that. He
Oh,
likes
I
to do
can
it.
imagine he is.
He has 6 kinds of figs in one tree, and he's always doing something.
I see you have some kind of is it a decorative or an ornamental orange that right here in front?
These are kumquats.
Oh, kumquat. I see the leaf looks like a...
Yeah, it's kumquats.
like an orange.
They don't grow large. You eat the whole fruit. And the outside, the skin is sweeter than the inside.
What other kind of trees do you have?
Oh, we have pomegranates, persimmons, avocados, loquats, the chayote,
What are they?
and we have strawberry guavas, and some other kind of guava, I don't know the name.
My word, you're almost like a nursery.
He has something of every kind. We have 22 big orange trees taller than this here room right out here in front, and that freeze took them all in one day. So now he had to cut them because they were all dead. The shoots are coming up, so he's going to bud them. They're doing pretty good this year, but it was hard to get them to go because they got so frozen. Some of them froze right down to the ground, right into the ground. Several of them he had to dig the roots up.
That's about 4 years ago when
It is.
that was that very bad frost. Yes.
It was a freeze. We didn't get no frost. It was just that cold air and just killed them. It was during the day. And a few days later, all the leaves were dropping and the oranges were dropping. We used to have so many oranges, we used to give them away to everybody. The PG&E men, watermen, and everybody that fellows worked on the road. They would say, "Oh, can I have an orange?" Man would say, "Sure, help yourself." Once in a while, one would say, "Oh, if I could just take a few of these home to my wife, I would go and get a bag and fill it up." We had boxes and boxes of them. We never sold them, and they were nice and sweet, so we gave them away.
Yes, I imagine you get plenty of sun right on this lovely
Yes.
hillside. Well, I'd like to hear more about your activities. You were telling me that you belong to several organizations.
We belong to all the Portuguese organizations around the Bay Area except one. And we belong to the Knights of Columbus. We belong to the my husband belongs to the Red Men. And I belong to the Native Daughters, the Pocahontas, and all the other lodges. There's so many lodges.
So you have a very active social...
We have about 3 things every night that we can't go to. I go to this one this week, go to the next one next week. Tomorrow night we have one in Oakland.
Well, I'd like to hear about the Portuguese festival that I understand used to take place in Walnut Creek or in Concord.
Yes,
Could you tell us a little bit
that
about
was the Holy Ghost celebrations that they used to have. They discontinued them in Concord years and years ago, and they discontinued the one in Walnut Creek. I can't say how many years ago, 5 or 6 years ago at least. And it was because the old-timers all died or moved away, and the new ones were not active in it, and just a few that were left was not enough to carry on, because that was quite a big undertaking. It took a lot of people to work and take care of the hall and get the permits for the parade and get the music and get the dance music and the ones to accompany them in the parade. There was all different groups, and they had to have people take care of all that. Well, they went away and the others died, so the few that were left couldn't carry on.
Well, I hope the next generation will revive this marvelous festival.
I don't think they ever will, because there are not enough Portuguese here. And that's done mostly by the Portuguese. I was secretary of the thing for about 20 years or more.
Well, were there any activities besides social? Did you have any, did you raise funds for special occasions, or what was it like during the rest of the year?
No, they used to have some dances to keep the hall going. It was quite an expensive thing because the taxes were high, and they had to pay the taxes and pay the expenses, and they had to have the hall built. It used to be down where the Hendrick Piano Store is in Walnut Creek, but it was right on Main Street, and they couldn't have that when all the traffic came through. So they sold that property and bought the property in Saranac, where the hall still stands.
In Saranac? Where is it in Saranac?
You know where Hull's Undertaker is?
Yes.
Well, right down the street, that big building, that's where it was.
Oh, I see. Yes,
it's still there. So the association sold it to some, I don't know what it is, it's some religious outfit of some kind. But they were very nice people, and they were very nice to deal with, so we got rid of it, and that was the end of that.
Well, I heard the mayor of Concord several years ago talk about his hope for a revival of this festival.
Oh, yes.
So that's why I was wondering if you thought it would be
I
a
know
possibility.
around here there won't be any. There's such a few Portuguese people, and they were the ones that used to take care of that. There's very few around. These people that bought this house up here, the girl is half Portuguese from Sacramento. But that's all. There's no other Portuguese around, but very few Catholics even. She even is not a Catholic because she said her father was Portuguese. He was a Dutra from Sacramento, Manuel Dutra. But his wife was not, and he didn't force it on her, so the girl was raised non-Catholic. And I guess the man she married is not Catholic either, so she says they haven't followed Catholic religion. I never discussed religion with anyone, but she brought it out. I only met her the one time. We went up to say hello to her, took her some figs and asked her to come down and eat some or pick some. But I haven't seen her unless she came. We told her even if we weren't here to help herself. So I haven't seen her. They haven't been there very long. They just bought that home. So she's a very nice person. That would be the only one that has any Portuguese descent, I guess.
Do you belong to any organizations are you active in any organizations now in Lafayette?
Not in Lafayette, in Oakland.
I was wondering if you maybe were active with the Catholic Church, possibly.
I belong to the guild.
Yes.
Catholic Guild from St. Perpetua's Church. Yes. That's where we belong.
Yes, I know they have fundraising.
Yes.
And social events too.
They do, and they have their annual elephant sale. No, it isn't called that. I forget what it's called. Anyway.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, they have that to raise funds, and they get clothes and
White Elephant is called.
Different articles to sell. And they have a big time at the hall there by the church. Are you Catholic too?
I'm Catholic, but I haven't participated very much. Tell me about some of your husband's organizations that.
Well, most of them have lady members. So we're I am a member too. Not the red men. They have the Pocahontas, so they get together. We had a dime a dip luncheon a few weeks ago. They asked me to take macaroni salad, so I did. Each one took something. Let's see, Friday in Sonora, potluck dinner for the other lodge, and Sunday we have several things. Oh, tomorrow we have a meeting in Oakland for the other lodge.
So you are quite.
We never stop.
Mrs. Santos, won't you tell us about how you went to church in Orinda when you were a little girl?
We used to drive a team of horses with the wagon, and we sat 3 in the front seat, And when we had guests, we had an extra seat put on, and we sat in the back. I sat back there with the two children.
Who were the children that went to church with you?
It was Gertrude and Charlie Malley.
And they were neighbors?
They lived in Oakland, but they owned property here, and they used to come up for the weekend.
I see.
So we went together, and we'd come home. Then after lunch, I'd go down and play with them.
How old were they? About your age?
Just about my age.
Yes.
The girl was a little younger. Charlie was my age.
So what did you do when you played? Did you go horseback riding, or what did you do?
Oh, we used to play tag, and sometimes sit and talk. And you know how kids are.
Yes.
We weren't too active. We had to sit down and be good.
Because it was Sunday. Did you have any little chores to do?
I used to gather the eggs, bring in the wood, help quite a bit in that. And sometimes when I was quite small, my father had me drop the corn when he was planting corn.
Yes,
Or
by hand?
peas.
By
Yes,
hand?
drop one by one.
Well, how big was it this in the garden, or how big an area?
No, it was flat up there.
How did it, well, tell us how you did that. Now, did your father go along first and build
With
do a
a
furrow?
horse and make the furrow, and then I would drop the corn in there, and then he'd come along and cover it up with the horse again.
How often would you drop an ear of corn?
Oh, I don't
Not an ear, but
remember.
a kernel of corn.
Kernel of corn. I don't remember. I imagine 5 or 6 inches. I don't know.
Now, I think that's terribly interesting. I bet there aren't any little children today who get to do that.
And I used to help him drop seeds for squash when he planted squash. And when he planted tomatoes, I used to help him take them out of the box and give it to him so he could put it in the ground.
That must have been lots of fun.
And I used to have to ride the horse to school, and he used to wash it. In the winter, it would be so muddy, the poor animal, the whole side of him and the belly part would be all full of mud because these roads were not paved. It was just mud.
So the road belonged to the property owners along the road. Happy Valley, is that how it was?
I guess it
Because
was.
you said there was a gate every so
Yes.
often. So it probably was all private.
There was
road?
one down there where the Wells Fargo Bank is.
Yeah.
There was a big gate there to go to the other road, that was the tunnel road. And that was a very hard gate to open. And time came when my family thought we shouldn't try to open that gate. I had to go down Upper Happy Valley. There were no gates on this side.
I see.
So I went down Upper Happy Valley
And then,
and then went on the highway down. But it was just dirt with rocks so that they wouldn't get stuck in the mud. So it was not paved. And I remember when the first automobile started to go through Lafayette,
Yeah,
people
tell us.
used to give us permission to come up and see the car go through town. We'd be there forever now if we were going to watch the cars, wouldn't we? We could hear them. They had those big wheels and just little rubber on the wheel. You remember that?
oh, I sure do.
Like the old
Yes,
wagons.
the tires were quite narrow, weren't they?
Oh, they were just put on the rim of the wheel. I just sure remember that.
I sure do.
And they
We
used to
had
make
tubes
so
then. We had tubes in where
No.
the tires. No?
just the rubber.
Oh, I don't remember
The old big wheel and the rubber was just put right on the rim of the wheel. They never went flat. They wore out. I don't know whether they had to replace them. I guess they would when they went away.
When did your father get his first car, automobile?
In 1915. Model
What kind
T
was
Ford.
A Model T. Oh. Do you remember riding in it?
Oh, yes.
It was exciting,
It
wasn't
was very nice. And we just thought that was wonderful, all open. They had a top, but no sides. And they'd go down the road. And sometimes we'd give rides to different people, and they thought that was just wonderful. And it lasted quite a bit. After my father had bought it, they refunded $100 because they had said that if the company sold so many cars that year, they would send back $100, and they did. They kept their word. They sent my father a check for $100.
I think that's a delightful story. I've never
No, that's
heard that
cute.
one before. Yes.
He got $100 back. He thought that was wonderful. I don't remember what he originally paid for it. I thought $700 something, but I'm not positive.
That
They were cheap then. But at that time, we thought it was awful.
It was a lot of money.
My father used to make $1.50 or $2 a day.
Yes. Yes, so $700 was a lot of money.
Yes. I remember when he used to pay 50 cents for my shoes.
Yes.
And one time he bought a pair that he had paid 75 cents, and my mother was horrified. She said, "Oh my, 75 cents! Look how they have gone up. Now you can't get shoestrings for that."
No, I should say not.
Things sure have changed.
Things have changed, yes.
Money has gone down and things have gone up.
Thank you, Mrs. Santos, for giving us this very informative interview. Thank you.